Chapter 19. D-Day at Last, April to June 1944. It was surprisingly hard for me to conceive, when I walked the peaceful, picturesque beaches along the west coast of northern France for the research of this book and the related documentaries, that they were the setting for the remarkable, never-to-be-forgotten Normandy landings. The beautiful sands are known as the Côte de Nacre, which poetically translates as the mother-of-pearl coast, and the beaches are awash with poignantly moving memories of that auspicious and historic day when thousands of Allied troops came ashore on June 6, 1944. The events that took place there are celebrated as D-Day. Without doubt, this daringly heroic and ultimately liberating invasion marked the beginning of the end of World War II. Since September 1939, when war broke out, for the Allies, victory and the prospect of peace was a distant and often uncertain dream, somewhere in the future, as Adolf Hitler and his axis of evil stormed to power across Europe. But by 1942, the mists of doubt had slowly started to lift, and the vision of a world free from tyranny began to emerge. And although, up until D-Day, the war could still have swung in Hitler's favour as preparations were made, fortune seemed to have been smiling on the Allies for some time, firstly in North Africa, and then across the Mediterranean into Italy. Before Alamein, we never had a victory. After Alamein, we never had a defeat. Prime Minister Winston Churchill spoke these words after the British Eighth Army had triumphed against Erwin Rommel in the Second Battle of El Alamein. The Allies were at last making progress, and although months and years of conflict still lay ahead, the tide was definitely turning their way. Now, although the events of North Africa have been covered in detail in earlier chapters, it's worth taking a moment for a brief look back, as the key players in the D-Day landings were already emerging. This gives us the opportunity to discover a little more about the backgrounds of the remarkable heroes of Operation Overlord who played such key roles in the Normandy landings. The first battle of El Alamein had been far from conclusive. The Allied forces did battle with the Germans from the 1st to the 27th of July 1942, with the outcome being a stalemate at a cost of some 13,000 Allied casualties. Even though this war was far from ideal, the British still managed to take 7,000 prisoners and damage Hitler's North African campaign. Rommel's plans to advance to Alexandria and then Cairo were stalled, and this impasse also put a stop to Germany gaining control of the Suez Canal and many Middle Eastern oil fields, which would have had grave consequences for the Allies. Lieutenant General Bernard Montgomery took over the British Eighth Army in August 1942, and it was his insight and initiative that proved to be the downfall of the Nazis in the second battle at El Alamein. Using his experience of fighting in the First World War, Montgomery could anticipate and almost predict what was going to happen, and managed his campaign accordingly. Fortunately for Montgomery, the air support he received was outstanding when compared with the German Luftwaffe and Italy's Regia Aeronautica, who instead of supporting their ground troops became embroiled in air-to-air combat. Overall, Allied casualties were less than half of those suffered by the Germans, which were 30% of Rommel's men, and he had no other option but to retreat, moving the remainder of his army to Tunisia, where better defensive action could be taken. Winston Churchill famously described the 14-day battle at El Alamein that ran from October 23rd to November 5th, 1942, as not being the end, not even the beginning of the end, but perhaps the end of the beginning, and it was certainly the point at which the Allies started on the road to victory, with the colourful characters of Rommel, Churchill and Montgomery all gaining valuable experience. With the battle for North Africa over, the Allies could springboard into Europe across the Mediterranean, and the island of Sicily was the next target. The Allied invasion, codenamed Operation Husky, was a mix of amphibious and airborne warfare, with the aim of removing both the Sicilian Air Force and Navy, giving the Allies access to the whole Mediterranean. German intelligence had no knowledge of the invasion plans thanks to a decoy of documents planted on the corpse of a British officer stating that the Allies had no interest in Sicily. The papers claimed the next invasion target was to be Greece, so most of the German defences were relocated. Paratroopers were the first to invade just after midnight on July 9, 1943, but due to very strong winds, many landed miles off course.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?